Hello? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Let me testing 1, 2, 3. Let me try reconnecting. I'm gonna try to reconnect and maybe that'll fix the sound issue. Hello, can you hear me? I'm sorry, I still can't hear. I'm not sure if it may be on your end. I completely restarted my computer, or I restarted Chrome. For what it's worth, I can hear kind of a little bit of static. Hey, I can hear something. I can hear kind of a buzzing.
Hello. Are you able to hear us now?
I can hear. Yeah, I can hear you a little bit. It's kind of muffled.
Okay, so stop. Can we stop? Like we'll ask the questions later on, so we can figure out something at that point of time.
Okay, cool.
Hello.
हाँ तो बोल दो टॉक स्टार्ट कर दे तुम बता दो बोल दो टॉक स्टार्ट कर दे बिल्कुल
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start talking, everybody. Unfortunately, at this exact moment, I can't hear what you all are saying. Maybe raise your hand if you can hear me. Okay, cool. Raise your hand if you can't hear me. That's an old one. Hi, everybody. I'm Quincy. I'm with FreeCodeCamp, and I am so thrilled to join you all at man, your school has a long acronym, but I understand you all have come from several different cities in the region to participate in Hack36. So who all here is participating? Who's building a project? Okay, quite a few people. Who all thinks that they're going to win? Okay, I see some confidence out there. That's great. Well, how many of you, this is your first ever hackathon? Raise your hand if it's your first hackathon. Don't be shy. Okay, quite a few. Great. Well, I will tell you that when I was first learning the code, and I didn't do it in university like you all are doing, that's definitely the faster, more conventional route. I was working as a school director, and I was running different schools in the US and in China. And I just started learning how to automate certain aspects of my job so I could free up teachers so that they could go and spend more time with the students and less time entering data into computers and things like that. But during that period, when I was first learning the code, I went to so many hackathons. I'd go to like a hackathon every weekend. And I actually won a few too. So it sounds like this Hack36 is very competitive, and you're going to have a whole lot of smart people around you that are doing their best to win as well. But I just want to wish you all luck. And I'm optimistic that worst case scenario, you'll learn a lot and you'll make a lot of friends. That's what hackathons are all about. So I was invited to talk. I wasn't sure exactly what I would talk about, but I think I can just talk about FreeCodeCamp and some of the exciting things that are going on there, if that would be of interest to you. Is that what you all would like to hear about? Raise your hand if you'd like to hear me talk about FreeCodeCamp. Okay, that's probably more than half. So I'll just talk about FreeCodeCamp and some of the exciting things we're doing. So who here has used FreeCodeCamp before? Raise your hand if you've used FreeCodeCamp. Okay, cool. Quite a few. Thank you for using our humble open source project. So FreeCodeCamp is a community. We have millions of people using freecodecamp.org every month, and thousands of campers, what we call people who use FreeCodeCamp, have gone on to get their first developer job. Some of them have a CS degree as an undergrad. Many of them studied completely unrelated topics. A lot of them didn't even go to college. So you all already have a huge advantage over a lot of them in that I believe you're all students, right? Is everybody here a university student? Okay, pretty much everybody, except for many people looking at their phones and stuff. So with FreeCodeCamp, our goal was to create something that was completely open source, that was completely interactive, that you could do completely in the browser. And that's for a number of reasons. We have a lot of people who don't necessarily have computers. Maybe they're just using a library computer. Maybe they're working through FreeCodeCamp on their smartphone. We just wanted to make everything so you didn't have to install a lot of things. and get a development environment together. Which who here has ever had problems with like C libraries and Linux installations and things like that? Has anybody here spent some time just stuck on Linux problems or getting Windows to run properly? Yeah. So you all know what I mean. So we wanted everything to be right in the browser, and that presented a lot of technical challenges because we wanted to make it super fast and really secure. First of all, one of our decisions early on was we were going to focus purely on JavaScript and web development and not attempt to teach, like Android development or something like that in the browser. Because if we were to do that, then it would no longer really be interactive. We'd be giving you instructions, you'd be going and doing something, and then you'd be coming back and telling us you did it. And that's good and all too, but you can get that from a book. You can get that from a video series. We wanted it to be you're in a browser coding the entire time. So I'm going to tell you a little bit, because this is a hackathon, I'm going to tell you about the scrappy story of FreeCodeCamp and how it went from one guy sitting in his closet eating microwave burritos and just coding as much as possible to being this large organization with thousands of contributors. So I, Quincy, had already created a closed source project that was an online course recommendation engine. And it would help people figure out a sequence of online courses. Like who here has taken like a Coursera course? Raise your hand if you've taken a Coursera course. Okay. And raise your hand if you've taken like an edX course. Okay, also a lot. So I wanted to take, I created this system. It was a recommendation engine that would basically look at your LinkedIn. You authenticated with LinkedIn, and then it pulled in all your profile and all your skills and all your degrees and everything like that. And it started trying to figure out what it thought you knew, what skills it thought you had. And then it would, at the same time, ask you about what types of fields you wanted to move into. And I built all these different scrapers, and I was pulling down millions of job postings and processing them, trying to understand the composite skills that each job needed in aggregate. When you're looking at thousands of different jobs, what is the most common skill set associated with being like, a business intelligence 3 developer or something like that, right? Like these very specific, and then it would work backward, and whatever your desired job was, it'd figure out what you already knew, what you needed to know, and then it would go and get courses. And I had, maybe 10,000 online courses, like MOOCs, free online open courses, and also a lot of technical books and things like that. And it would walk you through all that. So then it basically built out this entire curriculum that told you exactly what you needed to do in what sequence. And that project utterly failed. Nobody wanted to use it. And I'd spent like 18 months just building this thing. And like every time I talked to somebody, I was like, oh, it's going to be great. You'll be able to do this, this, and this. And they'll be like, oh, can you do this? I'm like, well, you don't need to do this because it does this. And so it was the whole situation of me not really listening to what the end users really wanted, and think like I was being too smart. I was thinking, oh, they won't need to do this because they'll do this. It's the old Ford quote. If you're familiar with the guy who founded Ford Motor Company, he said, if you ask people what they wanted, they would say they wanted a faster horse. But really what they wanted was a car. They just didn't know they wanted that. And so that's kind of the thinking I was in. I was like, oh, well, I'm going to show them. I'm going to create this amazing tool that creates an entire curriculum. Whatever they want to learn, it'll help them learn that in a really optimal way. But that wasn't what people were asking for. So that's one thing that I would tell you all, like, don't spend 18 months building something that you think will help people that they're not actually asking for, because in some cases that may be the case, but in many cases you'll just be wrong. And I was just wrong. So there's an expression, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And a lot of times you're leading the horse to what you think is water, but maybe it's not really water. Maybe it's sulfuric acid or something, right? And they're like, no way, I'm not drinking that. And you just spent 18 months, creating a whole bunch of sulfuric acid, hoping that it would be really delicious. Well, it's not very delicious to them anyway. So, so yeah, that would be like, that was the major lesson learned from that 18 months of my life. And I got really good at coding too. I built so much stuff, like a recommendation engine, dozens of scrapers, all these things. And got really good at working with data. So it wasn't a waste. It was a learning experience, but I think it would have been really cool if I had started on something like FreeCodeCamp 18 months earlier. So that's my lesson to you all is like the lean startup and like agile development methodologies and all these things that encourage you to talk to your end users as much as possible and get out of the building. I would strongly encourage you to do that. So if you're building a project, build the minimum viable product and take it out and get some people to do, hallway usability testing, like, oh, how do you like this? What does this do? Or just shut up and step back and watch them use it and see if they can figure it out. And if you don't have to explain anything and they can figure things out and get things done, great. And that's why so many hackathon projects that win hackathon prizes are really simple. Usually they just do one very simple thing, like the interface might literally just be clicking a button with LinkedIn or something like that, and then it pulls all the data and does something interesting with it, and it shows that directly to them, right? Or maybe you just solve some very common problem. So you don't need to go after like particularly complicated problems. You just have to make things slightly simpler, and that'll be a huge help. And for the judges, I'm not sure how they're judging Hack36, but from my experience, most of the judges at different hackathons I've gone to here in the U.S. have they've been, entrepreneurs. Sometimes they're professors from like computer science departments and things like that. But if they're coming from industry, they generally look for utility as much as they look for, like technical execution and things like that. So keep that in mind. And the other thing I'll say, if this is your first hackathon, you have to demo and you should start the demo immediately. Like when you're going up there to pitch, or when somebody's coming to your table, if that's that format where they're just walking around and looking at everything, show them the demo as quickly as possible, 10 seconds to demo. Once they see the demo, then they'll understand what you're talking about. But if you spend like a minute or two trying to introduce it, generally they'll get bored and they'll start looking at their phones and stuff. So I hope that's helpful hackathon advice. So back to the FreeCodeCamp story. So I was sitting in a closet. I was working on FreeCodeCamp on myself. And I spent 3 days just building a really quick Node.js prototype and getting the site live. And then I just started tweeting about it and blogging about it and trying to get people to use it and trying to get people to care. Well, that was great because people did start to care. Actually, let me see if I can share my screen. And I'll go to the Wayback Machine. Do you all use the Wayback Machine? Can you see my screen? Raise your hand if you can see my screen. Can you all see my screen? Okay, cool. Thanks for confirming that. Sorry, I don't have audio yet. So I'll just go to Wayback Machine, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into I'm going to show you what FreeCodeCamp looked like when we first launched it. It was October of 2014. And back then it was freecodecamp.com. I wish I'd just said it as freecodecamp.org, but we had to move everything over and we lost a lot of SEO when we became a nonprofit. So we can go to like the earliest, and oh my God, this is going to look terrible, but you'll get to see what the earliest, November 1st, this was about 2 weeks after I think it went live. We'll see what it looks like here. Okay, so it's not even loading the markup. Let me see if I can get it to load the markup. Let's just try December 3rd. Maybe that'll... I think even by December 3rd, it was probably a lot better looking than it was when I first started. Okay, load the snapshot. All right. All right, this is it. Yeah. So you can see it just said code with us. Let's learn to code by building projects for nonprofits. And it had like the 3x4 bullet points, like connect with people. So there was an emphasis on community from the very beginning. Learn JavaScript, build your portfolio, help nonprofits, which is still a big thing that FreeCodeCamp does. We have a whole bunch of different projects that you can build and contribute to that are used by lots of nonprofits. So then you scrolled down and you saw the chat room. And interestingly, this looks like the chat room. Oh, this is just a static screenshot. No, wait, this is actually how it was. I guess they loaded it. But you can see like these are all the people that were here at the very beginning. So this Rybar guy, he designed our logo. And I remember this guy, I Heart Code, he was very active early on. So it's kind of cool that Wayback Machine preserved that, because I didn't realize that they could pull dynamic data like that. But then, you scroll down and we just have like a huge, like frequently asked questions section. We had time estimates about how long it would take in order to complete it. And then we were emphasizing, why you should learn JavaScript instead of learning Ruby or Python. I think Python's great, don't get me wrong, but learning JavaScript, there are just so many more resources for learning it. And you can do pretty much everything you can do in Python in JavaScript. It's just not quite as elegant. So then we just put a whole bunch of different, statistics and things like that. And then you just have another call to action. So that was like FreeCodeCamp. And I don't know if it'll actually follow the different paths. Log in. Wow, this is pretty cool. So yeah, you could sign in here, and it had like options to sign in with Twitter and stuff like that. I think there might be a way to view the actual pages without signing in, because we won't be able to sign in anymore. But basically what it was it was a chat room. It was a list of different online courses that everybody should go do together, like Harvard CS50. Has anybody taken Harvard CS50? Yeah, okay, that's cool. Quite a few of you. It's a really popular course. So that was part of FreeCodeCamp's curriculum. We'd just say, hey, go do Harvard CS50. And then later we switched that for Stanford's computer science course, because it used JavaScript. And then like a whole lot of other things. And then eventually, as the community got bigger, then we brought even more, like many of the people who were learning to code through FreeCodeCamp would start contributing. And a few of them started to build the actual challenge infrastructure, active challenges on freecodecamp.org. And that was really when things really started to take off, because a lot of people would come and do that. And now we've completely overhauled freecodecamp.org. By the way, we started like 3 years ago. And the way freecodecamp.org is currently, if you go through the coding challenges, that hasn't really changed in more than a year. But we have what's called beta.freecodecamp.org. And it is a significant expansion to the curriculum. And it's also single page React app. Very and you can see like it looks a little simpler, but you can resize things, you can hide things. This isn't what the final UI will look like, but if you wanted to have like a full page code editor, for example, you could do that. And we're going to have multiple files where you'll have like a CSS file, multiple JavaScript files, things like that. That's all coming very soon. But we're going to ship this first. We're just doing some final debugging and stuff on it. But the way it's going to look is, instead of having, here, let me just make this map full screen so you can see it. Instead of having just 3 certificates, we're going to have 6. And we're also going to have, so responsive web design is just HTML and CSS. JavaScript algorithms and data structures is just JavaScript. And if I expand it, you'll see you learn ES6, you learn regular expressions, debugging techniques, object-oriented programming, functional programming, and there are a lot of additional algorithm challenges. Then we have the front-end libraries, and we have Bootstrap, jQuery, Sass, React, Redux, React and Redux together in concert. And then you build a whole bunch of projects. And some cool things about these projects, by the way, is now they have test suites that go with them. So let's just go over to here, and I'll show you. This is like the example app, but you can click Run Tests, and it'll run the tests, and it'll show you all 12 tests are passing. You can pop that up, and it'll even show you how long it took to run them and stuff. So this is pretty cool. And if I, broke something, then let's say hypothetically, I just go to detail view or editor view. Let's say I just hypothetically deleted all the HTML, right? I'm pretty sure that this is going to cause a lot of the tests to fail. Okay, interesting. Why is that even rendering if I kill all the HTML? Okay, so I'll run the test now that I deleted all the HTML. Okay, so let's try let's just try getting rid of the JavaScript. And I'm just doing that. I could break it in more sophisticated ways, but all right, nothing to see here. I'm not sure what's going on. This is the random quote machine. This is a little lesson you'll pick up is whenever you have to demo something, it's going to fail. So you have to pray to the demo gremlins that they don't climb into your demo and break it. So we have those projects. Then there's data visualization, and we have these D3 challenges and stuff like that, which are pretty cool. Let's see if I can get this run. All right, and it passed, and it's just using D3 to add DOM elements here. It's nothing fancy. Later, it does get pretty fancy, though. And then we have the information security and quality assurance, which will cover testing and using a library called Helmet.js. We're using Chai for the testing. We've got a whole bunch of additional Node.js related stuff. There's, authentication. It covers encryption and basic stuff like that using WebSockets. So these are all going to be pretty fun to do, and it'll be a significant expansion to the curriculum. And also, we're in the process of importing like Rosetta Code problems and Project Euler. There are like 600 Project Euler problems that you can do on FreeCodeCamp. So you'll be able to do all these in the browser instead of with Project Euler. Traditionally, you have to go and download everything and run it locally on your machine. So, yeah, thousands of additional coding challenges are going to be added. And we're really just getting started. We also have a bunch of additional like system design concept questions. So these are like multiple choice questions. And you have to get them all right, and then you can complete that. But we're going to add a whole lot of those. We have a whole lot of additional projects that you can build that are kind of extracurricular projects, such as Unbeatable Pong, I think is one of them. Yeah, build a ping pong game. This is pretty cool. I just want to show you this. So it'll never lose. Some guy said he did manage to beat it, but what he had to do was go in and he had to change the CSS so that the paddle wasn't as tall, and the AI didn't realize that the paddle wasn't wide enough, so it kept missing the ball. So yeah, it's beatable if you actually change the source code. But yeah, you'll be building things like that. So in essence, like FreeCodeCamp has grown from being a curriculum where So FreeCodeCamp has grown from being a community that is built in, like based in a chat room, to being a much larger project where you're going through and completing hundreds of coding challenges and getting free verified certificates And thousands of people have gotten jobs as a result of FreeCodeCamp. All of this stuff has grown because I think it's because I listened to the people who are using FreeCodeCamp and asked them how we could improve it, and I gave them more and more authority to expand it. And the nature of open source, you're releasing power and you're letting other people come forward. And whenever you do that, you take a risk. And a lot of big corporations are a little more cautious about these kinds of things. But when it's just you sitting in your closet eating microwave burritos and coding all day, it's okay. You can take risks. So I think all of you are in a very privileged position in that you're university students. How many of you are working in addition to going to university? Okay, so you're full-time students. Everybody's just studying full-time. That's great. In the U.S., almost everybody has a job in addition to going to school because school's so freaking expensive here. But yeah, you've got so much that you can do. And if your project fails, no big deal. Just do another one. Nobody even remembers any of my failed projects, and there are quite a few of them. So I would say just keep going and keep building stuff and keep iterating. If you know a whole lot about a specific topic, I would focus on that. I focused on education specifically because I'd spent 10 years as a school director. So yeah, I would recommend focusing on that domain. So at this point, unless, or I'm going to just answer any questions you all have. Unfortunately, I still don't have any audio. So I won't necessarily be able to hear the questions, but somebody could type them in, I guess. Okay, cool. Yeah, if you want to just keep taking the questions and typing them in, I can answer them as I see them pop up in chat. Okay, great question. So if you want to keep adding questions, if you want to keep typing them, and then I can just go through the whole queue. But I'll go ahead and start talking about net neutrality. First of all, I know net neutrality is an issue that is very important to the people of India. And many of us in the US have been looking to India as an inspiration because you all did an amazing job of publicizing the issue and communicating the issue to people. It's a complicated issue, and getting people to understand it, and then showing the government, no, we don't want to give up net neutrality. No, we don't want to allow Facebook to come in and have paid prioritization and to have, internet.org or what were they calling it? Like Facebook Zero or something like that, where people can anybody can just use money to reach people and block out all the other people that don't have a whole lot of money to basically buy into these Facebook packages, right? So is if you give somebody a free service that is extremely diminished. Just because it's free, that'll immediately, like, that small microcosm of the real open internet, that will be enough for some people that they won't venture further and that they won't necessarily pay money to explore a much longer tail of services and of different types of communities and websites. So for startups and for open source projects and for a lot of nonprofits and even for small businesses, it's an existential threat if your customers can't reach you, if they don't even know you exist, if they try to go to your website and some telecom is intercepting that traffic and forwarding them to one of your competitors who happen to pay them a bunch of money, right? Things would work if net neutrality weren't in place. Unfortunately, in the US, we have a few people, not very many, but a few people who have managed to get into power in very specific places. Chair of the what's called the Federal Communications Commission here in the US. He's just ignoring the will of the people. If you look at it, like polls of Americans, virtually everybody is in favor of net neutrality. But there are a few very powerful corporations, AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, that have a vested interest in basically trying to control as much as possible so they can tax everybody, so that they can do the three things that they're not supposed to do, which are slow traffic down, block traffic, and accept money to speed other people's traffic up, paid prioritization. I've written a lot of articles about net neutrality. I wrote one that is quite long. It's like a 10,000 word essay about net neutrality, and it talks about the history of information technology, especially telecom. They often start open, radio, television, certainly the internet. And as time progresses, more and more corporate interests come in and kind of close them down to where it's just a few options, and you have to be a powerful corporation to have the resources to even get in onto television if you want to buy like an advertisement, for example. So if you have time to read that, I'll go ahead and share a link to it right here. I don't know if you can all help me distribute that, but that talks about the American situation and kind of net neutrality in a historic perspective. In India, it sounds like you all have already fought this battle, and yes, there are probably more battles that'll come down the road. So I would just ask that you all cheer us Americans on and help us also defeat the greedy corporations that are trying to dismantle net neutrality. We're not going to give up. We're going to keep fighting it. Okay, so the next question. Oh, man, you all are asking me questions I happen to have pretty like a lot of experience answering. So this is a great question. Whoever asked this, thank you. What advice would you give to a beginner as a blogger who wants their articles to be published in the FreeCodeCamp Medium publication? So beyond just the FreeCodeCamp Medium publication, which you can certainly submit to, and we'd welcome your submissions, I have a submission guide, which I'll just go ahead and paste the URL for. By the way, the FreeCodeCamp Medium publication gets around 100,000 visitors a day. And we have approximately a month on the articles. So if you get published in the FreeCodeCamp Medium publication, you're basically guaranteed to get several thousand views. So it is definitely a good place to submit it. But it's not the only place. You can have your own blog. You can publish directly onto Facebook or LinkedIn. You can also create your own Medium publication. You can do a lot of different things to get your writing in front of people. So I gave a talk in New York City back in April about technical blogging in general and my theory of technical blogging, if you will. Basically, it comes down to this. Your articles need to have three things. They need to have substance. You need to know what you're talking about. It needs to be something substantial and not just like, where you boil away all the text and the underlying messages hang in there, like so many motivational articles, right? It needs to actually have something substantial to say. And I'll just give you a couple quick examples of substantial articles that have done really well on the FreeCodeCamp Medium publication. So we had this one gentleman from Lagos, Nigeria, who wrote a 75-minute read on Medium. It's really long. But he wrote like a complete guide to Flexbox, CSS Flexbox. And first of all, originally he put it up on GitHub, and it was just a series of like markdown files on GitHub. And I thought that was pretty cool when I discovered it, and I was like, oh, this is great. You need to turn this into something that, like, a Medium article where it's designed to be read rather than a reference, which I think GitHub is kind of the wrong medium for publishing books. People do it. Like You Don't Know JS, for example, is a great book, and you can get it on GitHub. But the author money, and he gives you like a much better version, or you buy a paper copy, because reading articles on GitHub isn't necessarily that great. So anyway, I convinced him to repackage it. That's the second thing. So the substance and then packaging. So we repackaged his article as a Medium article. And then the third thing is you just need to go out and distribute it as much as possible. You need to tweet about it. You need to share it on Reddit. You need to share it on Hacker News. You need to share it on Facebook and try to get kind of a groundswell of interest where people are sharing it. And then you'll have more readers as a result. And the great thing about Medium and a lot of these social media platforms is you get more followers, and then next time you write, even more people read. And it's a virtuous circle. You write good stuff, people follow you, and then you write more good stuff, and that reaches even more people, and more people follow you. And so, you definitely want to get that flywheel going. And I strongly recommend in something specific like Linux, for example. It was great. If you just write articles about desktop Linux or server Linux or something like that, or if you just want to write about DevOps, or if you just want to write about Docker, and you just go deep on different topics and you really become an expert on that. That's what people want to read. They don't want to read a list of like 10 things you probably didn't know about Docker, right? They want to read how you can do this amazing thing with Docker. So that would be my advice. Substance. Package it properly, understand the medium that you're using, and tune your article to it, and understand the audience and the differences of audience between those different mediums, and then publicize it like crazy. That's the biggest part of the work. Okay, so next we have an interesting question. How did you gain initial community for FreeCodeCamp? Motivation behind continuing your work at FreeCodeCamp rather than joining some company as a developer? Great question. So I had already left like my first developer job. So I worked as a school director, and then I left that just so I could focus on building what I thought at the time would be like an amazing tool for automating schools. So that's all I knew, right? I just knew how schools worked. And I think if I'd gone to focus on building that tool, probably would have worked out. And if I'd stuck with it, because I had a lot of domain expertise, I knew a lot of people, a reasonably good product, and created a little niche, and had like a bunch of corporate customers. And I think that's how most startups work. They have a niche and they figure it out, and they have a lot of domain expertise that they can use. So I'd already left that, and the thing that I'd been doing throughout my entire adult life was just saving as much money as possible. For hobbies, all I do is read books, run, and now that I have kids, play with my kids. And kids are kind of expensive, but if you just save as much money as you can, then you have a whole lot more flexibility, and you have a lot more options. Like corporate America would like you to believe that taking a year off is like a death sentence. You're never going to get a job if you've got a gap in your resume, and you're going to have to explain that to people, right? That's what they want you to think, so they can get you to hustle from one job to the next. But in real life, if you can do the job, then people will hire you. Like at the end of the day, they just want somebody who can get something done. And so if you can prove that you can do that and there's no risk, then great. So I knew that I could always go back to the school director job. Probably go back and be a software engineer, because I'd already worked as a software engineer at some company. So knowing that I could do that took away a lot of my fear. And I had savings that I could use to continue to fund FreeCodeCamp, which I did fund basically entirely out of my savings. I liquidated all my stocks and just kept pouring it into FreeCodeCamp. But I did that because everything was moving in the right direction. People were very positive about it, and we had a tremendous amount of support. And it was growing steadily, and I had a whole lot of computer science professors saying, I want to use this as a tool in my class. I had a whole bunch of people getting jobs. So there were all the indicators that FreeCodeCamp was making a positive difference in the world were there. And then we started accepting donations about 10 months ago. And now we're receiving so many, enough donations that we can have a small staff and we can pay for servers and things like that. So I haven't had to put any of my personal savings into FreeCodeCamp in several months. And it looks like we're sustainable and we'll be able to continue to grow as long as we grow smart and sustainably. So I certainly had a lot of companies approach me saying like, oh, we can do you should come work for us, kind of wanting to acqui-hire FreeCodeCamp almost. And there's no reason to do that because we've already made it this far without having big corporate money. We've never run ads. We never had resources to run ads, and yet every day thousands of people come to freecodecamp.org for the first time. So, there wasn't really a whole lot that being part of a larger corporation would have to offer. I didn't need the money necessarily. My wife is also, I'm blessed with a wife who has, a CPA, which is like the accounting standard here in the US. You can go out and get a nice job as an accountant and do pretty much all kinds of different taxes and stuff like that, which is a big industry in the US because we have a screwed up tax system. But yeah, so I had plenty of options and I didn't feel any pressure to go work for somebody. And I'm glad that we have that independence. FreeCodeCamp's a nonprofit. Nobody owns it. It'll just continue forever. And the code base is open source. Somebody doesn't like something, they can fork it. And if we come to agree with them, we can merge it back in, or they can have their own alternate version of the project. And some people have done that. That's no big deal. So there's just no reason to do that. So how did we get the initial traction? A lot of it has to do with just luck, frankly. We were in the right place at the right time. A whole lot of people wanted to learn to code. We happened to have a really good, well-designed curriculum because I was working on the curriculum full-time, trying to get it to be as smooth as possible. We had a whole bunch of teachers and experienced engineers contributing to it. So all of that helped. And then I just blogged a whole lot. I tweeted a whole lot. I did read books on marketing and things like that. I have a business background. I have an MBA. So all that information was helpful. You don't need an MBA. You can learn all that stuff from books too. But just having spent a whole lot of time looking at different businesses and figuring out strategies and also managerial experience, because I'd been a manager for like 5 years just running different schools. So all of that was helpful and put me in a position where I could. Okay. Do we have any other questions? All right. Thank you for your time. Surely the participants are more motivated than ever. Thanks for being part of Hack36. Thank you, everyone. I hope you all have a beautiful evening and morning. I think it's morning over there. It's like the middle of the night here. So I hope you all have a blast. Good luck with your projects. If you built anything cool and it's on the web, tweet it at me. I'm on Twitter. It's twitter.com/OSSIA, like open source software, OSSIA. It means an alternate passage of music. It's an Italian word. So yeah, give me a holler on Twitter, and I will be happy to answer your questions. If you tweet at me, I will send you an answer, unless it's like a completely absurd question, or like a troll question. And I just encourage all of you to, regardless of how this hackathon goes, keep doing hackathons. Learn as much as possible. And I just want to thank the organizers of Hack36 for inviting me and for inviting all you all. And I want to thank all of you for spending your precious weekend time expanding your horizons and writing some code. Cheers, everyone.